Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon. I must say I'm a bit too embarrassed here to be your keynote speaker because I realize that we have the FSDC have arranged a line of very prominent speakers in the industry, from investment banking to banking, commercial banking, insurance, to consultants, to securities industry. So you're going to have a better take from those speakers later on. But what I'd like to share with you is how do I get to where I am today? Now, just to give you a little bit of background, from very young, I always wanted to be a banker. Why banker? Because, well, my father is a banker. My uncle is a banker. My grandfather, I should use the word was. My grandfather was a banker. I think my uncle was a banker too. So everyone in my family is in banking. So naturally, from very young, I always dreamed to be a banker. Not just a banker, but a good banker. Well, not exactly. I didn't actually get to where I wanted to be. Things happen and so on. But in college, maybe just like you, I studied, or at least I intended to study economics, thinking that, well, that lead me into financial services and banking. But very early on in college, I think it was just my second week into college, I fell ill. It turns out that it was not just a short-term illness. I ended up being very sick for most of my time in college. I ended up spending every half of the time in college and half the time in hospital. So while the other time when I was in hospital, I was still thinking that maybe I can catch up with my study. But then because I have to physically away from the college life, so I thought, well, what could I take to catch up with those credits without being in college, physically in college? Clearly not economics, because you have to be in the class. At the time, today I'm sure you can all do online. But at the time, it's really only, well. So I found this one subject that allows me to study off campus on my own sweet time, and that is studio art, painting. So I thought, okay, but I never imagined myself, end up in a career in art. I just thought I would use that time to catch up with those credits. Well, initially, it was meant to be just for that one semester. But turns out that my sickness continued, so I end up keep taking that every other year. So by the time I came back on my fourth year, now, I was supposed to graduate in 4 years, but clearly I didn't finish in 4 years. I have then just as many credits in economics as well as in my art. Then I asked myself that question, well, what should I do? Do I want to stay on in studio art, or should I stay on in economics? It will probably take about the same time for me to graduate. But of course, by then, I actually fell in love with studio art. Never intended to be, but then because the fact that I've done this for a few times, I thought, actually, I kind of like it. But can you imagine if I was to be perfectly normal, healthy person? I tell my parents that, hey, I'm going to study studio art. I'm going to graduate in studio art. At the time, this is talking about 30 years ago, I think my parents would freak out. They said, I spent all that money for you to go to college and you finish in a studio art degree. Now, what good is that career? What good is that credit, degree were good for you after college, right? But because I was so sick that my parents basically say, okay, whatever, just finish, come back. So I chose studio art. Well, today, 30 years later, I know I'm here supposed to promote FSDC, not studio art, right? But don't worry, I'll get back to that. No, so 30 years later, did I ever regret studying studio art? Absolutely not. Am I an artist? Absolutely no. But did I apply the stuff I learned from my studio art degree? Absolutely yes. I'll tell you why later. No, so that is actually my message. My message is not exactly what you study, like our chairman, our chair lady, Mrs. Laura Chan mentioned. It doesn't matter whether you're a UConn degree or your whatever degree you are in. It's not so much about that degree that you hold. It all comes down to that attitude that you have. It's all about attitude. So while I was a studio art major, I was thinking, oh my God, I'm a studio art major now. There were 7 of us 7 of us in that year graduating as a studio art degree. The other 6, they were all at least 4 years ahead of me. Either they already have the inborn skills or the actual skill they learn. Whereas for me, I'm the last one. I was kind of parachute to this. So here you are. You know what was our graduating thesis? We don't have a thesis. We don't have the right. Our thesis is actually a project that we have to present. There you are. There were 6 other people there, so I'm the 7th person, right? So each of them already by then, after spending 4 years in college, had possessed a specialty. What are they? Well, there's drawing, there's a painting, there was a ceramics, there's a sculpture, photography, and mixed media. Mixed media, I guess, will be equivalent to today computer art or computer graphics. So here I was a 7th person. The other 6 are all very good at what they're doing. So I asked myself, well, in my final thesis, which is the project, it's like a presentation of our work, side by side with each other. I'm going to be in trouble. Because the other 6 are very good, and they're all very good in their specialty. So what was mine? I didn't have any specialty. But only one thing I know is I have to be different. Because if I do any of all those, drawing, painting, sculptures, ceramics, you know, I would be compared down because I have absolutely no close to those. So I have to force myself to think out of the box, to come up with something that uniquely mine, that it cannot be compared with others. So that's why I came up with dot painting. Why did I like it? No, I didn't like it, but I realized that nobody else is doing it. Why nobody else is doing it? Because it takes too much time. Well, it works. But it's not only that I picked the dot painting is by try and error. Try and error. I finally found a skill that nobody else is doing it. It's not because I'm anything special. I was thinking, well, I was trying to do a color dot painting, but it turns out that it takes too much time. I'm not going to graduate with doing color dots. So I figured, okay, let's forget about color, doing a big color dot. I thought I was change it to magic markers dot. A lot easier and quicker. But it turns out the magic marker dot is also taking too much time. So I figured, forget about magic marker, let's do black and white. Then I was trying to do black and white using black ink on white canvas, right? But that still takes too much time. So I'm thinking, okay, can I find another shortcut to that? Well, why fill up the whole whiteboard with black? So why don't we get a blackboard and fill it with white? That should save a lot of time. But then I realized that there's actually not many white medium that are opaque enough to get on the blackboard. So I searched and searched and searched again, and finally I found one medium. It works perfectly. You know what that was? Anyone here? Hello? Whiteout. Who said that? You did, Marvin. Whiteout. You know what whiteout is? You know whiteout, right? 塗改液. Whiteout. All right? I used whiteout. So I created my own thing called a whiteout dot painting. Now, in the final project, I was lined up side by side with everyone else. I don't recall anyone come by my area and saying, wow, your stuff is very good. This is awesome. Right? I don't recall anyone saying that. No one. But everyone came by and said, what is this? How do you do it? Why? Why are you doing it? Wow. You know, I think I just get enough attention as well as the others, but they're asking different questions. They'll all ask about, like, how do you come up with this? Why not? Why? And you know what my answer was? Well, why not? Why not? By the way, you want to check out my work, go to my website. Huh? It's there. So today, after 30 years, I think I'm still proudly to say my work is still at my home, proudly in display. By the way, I did study economics. I graduated with a minor, but I'm afraid to say that most of the economic theory that I learned 30 years ago does not work today. But the world has changed. A lot of things have changed. My point to tell you is not so much about, well, should you choose a career in studio art or go to economics? It's not. You know, it was not really exactly my choice to go into studio art. It's just that given the circumstances I have to make good with it. I have to make good with whatever it was. But the key thing is, You got to make the best out of it. So, this is my theory. It's only my theory. It's not been tested, so don't challenge my theory. And that is, probably only about 10% of the people will ever get their dream jobs. 10%. I just say 10%. So most of you here, I'm sure each of you have a dream jobs, maybe about. So my say is that only about 10% of you will ever get what you want. And if you are that lucky 10%, you can leave now. You don't have to stay here to listen to me or the other speakers. Congratulations. If you are that lucky 10%. The question now is, well, if you are the so-called unlucky 90%, then what do you do? By the way, I was that unlucky 90%. I didn't get the job that I thought I wanted when I was very young. So when you were the unlucky 90%, then what do you do? Well, I came down to 3 options. You have 3 options. Option number 1, you continue to dream about it. All right? One day, what happened? You continue to dream on. That's your option 1. The option 2 is, well, while you continue to dream, well, I have to still make a living. So you find a job, make good, while you continue to dream, right? Waiting for that chance to happen, right? So that's your option 2. Well, your option 3 is, obviously, continue to dream as well. Well, then I live good with whatever is given to me. But then, you're trying your best. You're trying your best to do whatever is given to you. To me, it was a third choice. Even though I didn't get what I want, and I'm giving a job that I was like, okay. But I thought, well, I might as well make the best out of it. And amazingly, every time, it was that effort that you make that opened more doors for you. Now, if you never even make that effort to try, those doors will never open. And who knows what that doors are? You don't know. We don't know. I've often been asked by students, where's the future? What's the future? What's career to choose? Honestly, how do I know? The world's changing so fast. And my business is in the bricks and mortar traditional financial services. Today, we have disruptive technology. We have many speakers here today from the internet world. So, well, are we going to be all replaced? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. The question is, do you have the right attitude to prepare for those changes? So my studio art degree didn't prepare me for being an artist. What it did prepare for me is the mindset. I always have to remind myself to think out of the box. How am I going to compete with my peers? How do I stand out? And you're going to be competing with lots of people. Right? Of course, as Mrs. Child referred to early on, integrity is number 1. If you don't have the good integrity, then you shouldn't even be in this business. That's your basic skill. But beyond that, you also need to think, beyond your norm, because we are facing with lots of different challenges. And I was very fortunate because from young, I was always into banking, and I wanted to be banking, but then, things didn't happen my way, so I ended up in insurance. Well, actually, I was in banking too, but then, in fact, my first job right after college was in investment banking, but I was not good at all, because I wasn't good at number crunching. Come on, I'm an artist. How good can I be in number crunching? So I was very poor. I still remember this conversation I had with my, I was an, what they call analyst, first-year analyst, and my immediate boss and associate, you know what that means. And the guy was so smart, he took me out to see his client. And he was so good. I mean, he can talk about anything. Right? He graduated from Harvard. No, I'm not even close. So I asked him after 6 months later. His name is Tim. I said, Tim, he's not from Hong Kong. He's American, Asian American. I asked him, Tim, wow, you're really good. You can talk about anything. Did they teach you that at Harvard? He said, oh, no, nothing to do with Harvard. I said, how do you know? Because you know what? That conversation was after we have a meeting with a Korean laundry maker, making women lingerie. And I was amazed at how he can talk about all these things, right? I said, where do you learn all this thing from? Textbook? He said, no. I read. From what? Time magazine. I say, Time magazine? Yeah. He said, well, you got to learn beyond, the usual stuff. And he taught me something. I still remember this after 20-some years later. He said, because I said, well, what should I learn? What stuff should I read? He said, think about it. Being an investment banker, you're providing a service to your clients. So the first thing you have to learn is you have to make the clients think that you know better than them. So you need to well-read about anything beyond the stuff that you just know. Because you only know what you know good at. That's not good enough. You know beyond that. But you have to know in-depth. It doesn't have to be in-depth. But at least you have to convince the clients that you know better than them. So I was impressed. I was very impressed. I thought, and that made me start thinking. So even like today, I don't just read the stuff that I normally read. I read things that may not be very beneficial today. Because what's beneficial today may not be beneficial tomorrow. What is not today may be tomorrow. So the most important thing about coming back to what I said about attitude is don't just look at things that seems beneficial to you today. Because you just don't know. I didn't want to go to insurance because I thought, banking is better than insurance. Little did I realize that actually insurance turns out the best thing that happened to my life. If I didn't go into insurance, I would not even have gone to politics in the first place. By the way, I'm a politician too. So it was insurance that got me into politics. When I went to insurance, I was very reluctant. I thought, insurance is not as high profile. Turns out, how wrong was I? I know we have an insurance speaker, but I really need to promote insurance too, right? Because so few people know what we do. We have so many categories of service providers. That's the problem, right? Because most people only being made aware of, say, investment banking, because that's, wow, nice thing. Commercial banking, nice thing. But there are a lot of other stuff out there that you don't know. Just like I said, studio art. You're thinking, studio art, ew. When I first came back, they keep reminding me, I only have 3 minutes, I want to talk more. When I first came back to Hong Kong, I meet with people, and I told them that, people ask you, like, what do you study? I told them I study studio art, or art. They look at me and it's like, whoa. And they look away from me, because they think, this guy's useless, right? You're gonna be prosecuted by people like that because people are so used to, that is good, that is no good. But let me tell you, they are so wrong. What good or bad is really up to you. But only until you try and you make that effort. Whether you're going to choose insurance, banking, commercial, investment banking, securities industry, or actuarial, whatever you take, it only works if you make full effort. And you're going to be someone. But if you're going to remain mediocre, I'm sorry, you'll be mediocre. So I just want you to know that whichever industry you pick, it doesn't matter. Whichever specific industry within this financial services you take, it doesn't matter. What matters most is whether you're giving your best try, your best effort. Because only until then, it will open doors to more things to your life. I still think you're all very lucky being here today because, in the scheme of things, we are competing globally. Hong Kong is competing globally. We're competing in every front. And we used to compete only with the bricks and mortar. Now we compete with also internet of the world. So there's even no boundaries anymore. We're competing in all fronts. But financial services still remain one of the major pillars. So I'm very glad that you, being here today, you make the right step because this is definitely still one of the remaining strong pillars of Hong Kong. But which part of the industry you pick, it doesn't matter. What matters is you make the full effort, right? Just like I said, you might think that, I still remember at the time when my days, everyone wants to go to investment banking. After investment banking is all now to, I guess now it's private equity, and now it's direct investment and so on. It's okay. I'm sure everyone wants to be there too, but hey, it's only a very selective few will make it there. But it's perfectly fine if you are just as good in the other sides of it, because for financial service to work, we need many other industries to support it. Legal, accounting, Legal, by the way, is a big part too, because the financial industry is supported by multi-layers of other industry to make it work. Risk management. In fact, by the way, risk management is a very important industry. Increasingly, all the financial service providers are under heavy scrutiny. So risk management is a very demanding industry. They are constantly short of people. So it's not sexy, it's behind the scene, but they're equally demanding and with lots of opportunities. So I need to stop because they keep reminding me I'm over time already. But I just want to thank you for taking us, as the chairlady alluded earlier on, you take a Saturday afternoon off to come here. By being here, it's the first right attitude. Be proactive. Come out. Because until you make this effort to be here, you do know what you're missing. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon because you have an amazing speakers lined up. You see, the thing is, I'm just so amazed. 30 years ago when I entered the job field, do you ever think that the head of the state would come to give you a final rally? For Mrs. Carrie Lam to come at the end of this session to give you that final comment. This is amazing. So please do not leave this room. I mean, I hate to see only about 20 of you left at the end of the day. I think it's 6 o'clock, right? So stay here. Because otherwise she will be so sad to see that this is all we have in Hong Kong. So do stay behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chan, for the most inspiring sharing and valuable advices to our audience. Would Mr. Chan please remain on the stage and be seated for the Q&A section? We'll now open the floor for the Q&A section. If you have any questions, please simply raise your hand. Okay.
Nobody asked questions?
Here.
Hello, I'm Angela. Nice to meet you. Right after your graduation, how can you feel if a job, both the position and the company, suits you? Thank you.
Well, it really comes down to try and error. I mean, you have to try. And only until then do you realize whether this is right for you. And usually it doesn't take overnight. It takes probably years. It took me a long time. It took me, as I said, for many years, I was still searching. I was continuing to search what was good for me. But then it turns out that I think only, it's almost like 10 years later that I realized that, oh, this is exactly where I want. So it takes a long time. But until you try, you make an attempt. And by the way, not try and just mediocre, right? You try, you push 100%. And then it opens out the doors. It's only until then you realize, oh, this is what I really enjoy, and this is what I want for the rest of my career. But you just have to make that effort. You won't know in day one, or you might think you know in day one, but until you work on it, and then you realize that, oh, this is not actually for me, and you move on, and so on and so on. So I encourage you to keep trying, but trying with the full effort, not just mediocrely. By the way, I've been told that I picked a book for you. So for any of you who ask an intelligent question, is that what it's supposed to be? You ask I don't know how you define intelligent questions, but if you ask an intelligent question, you get this book. By the way, I really make an effort. See, when I say I make an effort, I really make effort. Because when they asked me to pick a book, I thought, wow, what book? So I picked this book, but that is not available in Hong Kong. So I actually have to go to the US to get this book. It's called The Five Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And this book is all about communication. See, I don't have the hard skill. And the chairlady Laura Cha just mentioned, you need hard skills for certain people. I have soft skill. My soft skill is communication. And I think soft skill is important for every job you pick. And soft skill in this case is, well, how do you know? This is not about clients and it's not about you and clients. It's about you and your co-workers. How do you work with your coworkers? And what attitude, what languages you use? It's very important. There's 5 languages, 5 ways. And I guarantee you, if you study this book, you learn the 5 ways, you will do very well in the company. It's all about how you communicate. You know, a lot of time we fail also because of communication. So, so please ask more questions, and you might have a chance to win this book. So far, you're the only one, Angela. Yes? The questions in the back.
Hi, I'm Zoe.
The mic is coming.
Nice to meet you. I'm Zoe, and I'm actually a year 3 student. And the question I want to ask is, when you are standing at the intersection of choosing a career, actually, I know there are some very excellent startups. They are very small companies, although. I want to ask, when you know them, it's right there. They are right there. You choose to join them, or you go to some big companies. They are famous. You know that is good looking for your CV, and then you join them. Like, I mean, like insurance. It's not a very advanced, developed industry in mainland, and you know it will have a very bright future.
Yeah.
Then what should you do right now?
Yeah, it's a tough question. Well, in my time, there's not a lot of, well, at my time, the startup, the small one, they're really small. There's no future, right? Today, do not look down on startup because they became billionaire overnight. So, yeah, well, honestly, it's not an easy choice. I mean, I would, coming from the old school, I would say that go with the bigger companies because they have more resources, they have more to learn. But of course, your chance to move up that ladder will also be very long, right? Because you have so many people in the system, right? The great thing about working with startup is, you know, you are just about everyone else. You know, everyone has to put in 100% effort because, you know, it's a startup. So the mentality is very different. The skill set required is also very different. In a startup, you know, everyone, you know, is in the same level. Whereas in a very, the old school, the old established company, the hierarchy takes forever. You know, as I said, when you join a company, you're at the lowest level, and so on, right? It just takes forever to move up. So I can't say, especially we have speakers here from both, right? So I'm not going to offend any one of them. Being a politician, the one thing you learn is never offend anyone. Huh? But the truth is really where the opportunities have laid out for you, right? If so happen if the opportunity given to you at the time was a startup, then I would go with startup, right? Because there you are. But if you so happen to have both choices, right? Both choices, then you're very lucky. You're given the 2 choices. Then I'm going to ask you is, what are you most comfortable with, right? If you are the sort of the people with the mindset that I want to be challenged, you know, I want to be able to make a difference, be creative, then I'll probably go with startup because they are probably the sort of mindset there will be more willing to accept you, even though you are just a new graduate. They're willing to embrace you. Whereas if you go to a more traditional company, you know, you just have to go through the usual stuff. So it really depends on, I think, your personality. You know, what types of personality have you? If you are more willing to always, you know, to try out things and willing to be accepted for these new things, then I would go with startup. But then either way, it really depends on where the opportunities are. You know, I don't want you to, it's coming back to the point I keep talking about dreaming, right? I don't want you to keep just dreaming about something, but it's not there. It never happened. Then what's the point of dreaming? You should really move on and get on to something else rather than you just keep wasting time and not doing anything. That is the worst. So it really depends on what the circumstances you are given. Okay.
So, as I have read in the news, artificial intelligence is currently replacing jobs in the financial sector. So do you think artificial intelligence will eventually replace all the jobs in the financial sector? So we don't have to work anymore, right?
Yeah. As I ask that question all the time. Well, you know what? The truth of the matter is AI is going to be around. It's going to be very prominent. It will replace a lot of jobs. It will be. But there will still be a lot of jobs that it's not replaceable. It's not replaceable. And I guess it depends on the types of job you choose, right? As I said, you were talking about risk management. You know, that's not artificial. Well, I guess artificial intelligence can do a certain part of that job. But at the end, certain decision making still need to be made by human, right? So humans still make intelligent decision at the end. So the AI only provide perhaps the basic types of the skill set, but the most advanced skill set will still be retained by human. So that's why I said you cannot be mediocre, because if you're mediocre, well, yeah, I think we can all be replaced. The question is where. Now, when you talk about customers, we're dealing with customers. If you're talking about, let's say, just going back to my business, insurance is a lot easier. If you're just going to buy a travel insurance, which require absolutely zero skill, because you basically say, oh, I'm driving for 1 week, 2 weeks, and I want a coverage of so and so on, you push a button. You don't need any human involved, right? So sure. But if you're talking about underwriting a major risk, right? For example, the risk of a stock exchange, now, those is not just computer. Those you need these risk management guy, loss adjuster. You need a whole lot of people to calculate those risks. So it really depends on which level of the jobs we're talking about. But yes, AI will be a big part to it, and so that's why I kept saying early on that we have to evolve. And when we evolve, we always have to think out the box. We have to, because you cannot just assume the old model will work, because the old model is keep changing too. You know, as I said, I 30 years ago, what I learned at business, my econ classes, most of those theory is completely like out of the picture today. So who knows what's going to be after the AI? Could be something else too.
Sorry, I know we all have endless questions for Mr. Chan, but due to time limitation, we will have to take the last question from the audience.
I choose or you choose? That's the lady in the back.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chan. I'm Connie. I love your story very much, very attractive and fascinating. That we share the both same view. So to be more precise, the attitude you have mentioned before, like the good attitude. So I'm wondering, beyond proactive and integrity, what kind of attitude are you still looking for? Yeah, and because you encourage us to jump out of box, so I really would like to one day I can learn from you by working aside with you. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Well, wait till you come to work for me. That's a different story. I think the one thing, to be honest, for a longest time, right, I always feel very intimidated. By what? By a lot of things. Because I didn't get my MBA. I graduated with studio art. I didn't get the right qualification. If I have to start over again, I wish I had studied accounting, because accounting is a very important part of being in the financial services. I wish I studied law. That will help a lot with me with the job I'm in today. So there's a lot of stuff that I wish I have, and I didn't. And I now have to deal with lots of experts in the room and I always feel that, wow, I'm not good enough, right? So to answer your questions is, I constantly feel that there's so much more I need to learn. There's so much more that I'm not good enough for. And I think that is already good enough. I cannot specifically tell you, what exactly, having the right attitude is something, right? The integrity is second, but the eagerness to always learn, right? Even though you think that you're in the position I'm in, I always have to ask myself, what else do I need to know, to prepare for things that I'm not prepared for. Remember I told you about the magazine I read? I do, by the way, I read Time magazine all the time now. And I usually read not about financially related stuff, because I think I know a little bit about financial stuff, but it's to learn about things beyond just related to me. I think that's even more important, because that helps you to prepare for what the futures are. If you only know stuff that you are today, then you're just only good for today. It's what are the things that you don't know in the future. So that is the attitude that I try, but of course, given the interest of time, I never feel that I have enough time. But even without that time, I always force myself to learn ahead of me. So I think I have to thank that. By the way, I have to switch this one last thing I have to say, because it's a good story to tell you. It's about human nature too. So I got into politics. Some of you might know how I got into politics. I got into politics for running for the Let's Go insurance seat. Okay? So at the time, there was 4 of us. This is 1998. There's 4 of us competing for that seat. Right? The other 3, they're all like 25, 30 years older than me. Right? 25, maybe not 30, 25 years older than me. They are also 25, they were 30, 40 years in the business than me. I was a rookie in the business, right? And how did I win? I won, by the way, but I won with less than 10 votes. I won by less than 10 votes. And how did I win? Well, it turns out, well, think about it. Those the other 3, they're more experienced, more advanced, and I was a rookie. Nobody knows me in the industry. The good news was, well, because those other 3 guys been in the industry so long, and who are the voters, by the way? The people in the industry, right? So the people in the industry elect them, right? So my conclusion was there was 3 reasons why I won. Number 1 reason was the other 3 have been in the industry so long, and I was just been in the industry for 2 years. By the way, I know at the time, for the election, I know about 30 people in my industry, about 30. And who are those 30? I think 28 of them are from my own company. So in other words, I don't know anyone in the industry. But because of that, the other 3 persons, they've been in the industry for so long that they probably have upset a lot of people along those 30 years. Right? Because you're elected by your own industry, so you must have offended people. You must be, right? You're competing, you must offend people. So that's one reason. The other reason was among the 4 people, even though it's supposed to be that individual who runs for it, but the company that you work for, people associate you, or you must be working for that company, right? So among the 4 persons who are running, the company that I work for is the smallest. So what does that mean? It also means that you are less threatening, right? Because can you imagine that the one person who won, they say, oh, this is a big company. They want that seat. That means they're even more powerful. So my company, we're the smallest. So sometimes it's very funny about human nature, right? Because it's about you're the least threatening to people. Then, oh. Of course, the 3rd reason, maybe it's my own charm, maybe it's my own way. But it was not my skill set. It's not my skill set, it's not my experience, none of those. But then my point I'm trying to say is, you just never know. Just because you're not good enough yet, doesn't mean that you don't have the chance. Sometimes, all the other things, but only until you keep repeating the same message, make the effort, it'll pay off. Right? So don't underestimate yourself. Don't look for a quick win. Don't look for quick win. Prepare to invest in long things. Things that it doesn't appear very good to you today, who knows? 10, 20 years later, it looks good for you. But if you only keep looking at, what's good for me today, well, unfortunately, those will not open more doors for you. Right? Because those things that are good to you today, hey, because you see it, everyone see it too. So everyone see the same thing you are seeing. What you should be doing is looking at things that nobody else is seeing today. Of course, you don't too. But until you invest those times, you don't know what are the doors in the future. That's my key message to you. But good luck. I'm sure you're all going to do well. Again, last message, stay behind till 6 p.m. Do I have to choose the book now? Tough choices. It's very difficult for the 4 speakers, right? The 4 questions. I think I'll give it to the AI question. Because I don't know how to answer this question.
Okay, before you leave, Bernie, I just want to say that I've known Bernie since 1998 when he first won the insurance. At that time, he was under 30. You could not believe we're already in the government then. Notice that this is a future star of the government. And he's proven us right. And we've been colleagues in EXCO since 2004 in the North. And we're very lucky to have him today, don't you think? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chan. Now, let me pass the mic to Christy.